James Hardie 12 Hour is proudly brought to you by BP Visco 5000 Motor Oil, Ultimate Engine Protection, the new Toyota Celica, it's turned savage, Coca-Cola, proud sponsors of the James Hardie, and Mobil, looking after tomorrow today.
Years ago, in the chilly pre-dawn air of Easter, an experiment took place. The laboratory was Mount Panorama, and the alchemy was provided by Australia's best-known drivers in the world's best-known makes of production cars. The experiment turned out to be a resounding success.
The pre-dawn cold of Bathurst lit up like a Christmas tree. That is pit straight at Mount Panorama. Good morning and welcome to the James Hardie 12 Hour. A little under 15 minutes from now, they'll take off from here for 12 grueling hours. Grueling for the car, grueling for the driver. There they are on the grid, the two Mazda RX-7s. And sitting next to me, one of the great motor racing drivers of Australia, Alan Grice. 54 men and 1 woman. Gricey will take off. Why are they doing this?
Well, why are they doing it? Why do you go motor racing? You go there to win and beat the others.
Sure.
But what a distance this race has travelled. In 3 years, 3 years ago, they were just standard cars with stickers on. And now they're very well presented, very well prepared. There are 13 manufacturers involved. They don't get involved just for
fun. Yeah, exactly.
It's obviously the race is being recognised and perceived as being what Bathurst started off to be. A race for standard type cars with very minimum preparation. And what you see is what you can buy.
Mazda and Porsche, of course, that's the main point to make to you too. They are production cars with, of course, modifications for safety. Mazda and Porsche yet again, but we've got 2 feature cars, I guess, in the Maserati Shamal and the new BMW.
Yes, and the BMW's a good chance of running all day. It's very economical. The Shamal, I don't think I'd like to be driving that. Wouldn't it? $230,000.
Yeah.
What if you scratched it?
You wouldn't want to bingle it, would you?
Not at all.
Yeah, it makes it an interesting race, though, to see if the BMW can keep up with the Mazda.
Look, I think it's going to be a very good race because we've got the Mazdas that have shown that they're clearly quickest.
There is the Maserati, by the way. That's the Shamal.
Yes, indeed. It looks great too, and the BMW. It looks great in its livery.
Yeah, it does terrific, doesn't it?
But the Mazdas have certainly shown they've got the speed. I know the speed's going to be on from the start, which is great.
They'll gun
The
it.
Porsches are going to be trying to come back through there later in the day.
All right, down in the pits where, of course, a hell of a lot of the action happens in any motor race is John Smales with Mark Warren and Amanda DePledge. Good morning to all 3 of you.
Good morning, Tim, and I tell you what, it's damned cold down here. It really is. Look at the breath coming out of the mouth. And Amanda DePledge has found a way that the Toyota team has got to make their first laps a little bit safer.
Yeah, it looks like a sleeping bag for a tyre, and I guess in a way that's exactly what it is. But this is Formula One technology. Now, my assistant here has got the Toyota tyre. These are being used on the MR2 and also on the Celica. Now, if I pull that down, you can actually see the tyre, and it's been pre-warmed to race temperature, which saves a lot of time, also makes it very safe out on the track.
And Mark, this morning a real innovation in fuel technology in the James Hardie 12 Hour.
Yes, for the first time we'll be seeing LPG gas run here by Malcolm Rose, the Australian production car champion, and car number 44, the Ford Falcon. He's qualified 20th on the grid, so a lot of interest, John, to see how he'll go today.
And Tim, overnight a real battle in the turbocharged class as well. The Volvo turbocharged car has protested John Burke's pole position Subaru. They said the car was underweight. It took Burke until after 10 o'clock last night to convince the stewards that the car in fact was legal. Burke is absolutely ropeable. He says he's going to counter-protest the Volvo today for what he says is a differential problem.
Well, Gricey, that just goes to prove they do take it very seriously, don't they?
Well, don't they take it seriously? Brocky's protesting the Subaru about, oh dear, about some weight.
All right, up in the commentary box, and they'll take you through this race. Will Hagan, Evan Green and Colin Bond, good morning.
Good morning and welcome to a tremendous sight here, going through the pits earlier this morning. quite a bit of calm, yet an enormous amount of organisation required to get this field of 54 cars, perhaps 53 away, and just 10 minutes before they get underway on what will be a remarkable race. This is the way from the tail end of the grid that they'll be starting. Let's have a look at them. The Hyundai S Coupe Turbo, slower than the Hyundai Lantra Sedan, both of them from Korea. Nissan Pulsar's quite a brace of them, and that's the slowest, followed by the class-leading C-Class car, the only car in that class, the Falcon EBSS, Commodore Suzuki Swift, one of two. Honda Civic SI, nice to see that, and a brand new Celica ZR Heather Bailey truck racer from England, Gwenda Searle and Peter McKay backing up in that car, and then again Corolla's a very popular car in the race, as you'll see as we come through the grid. The Callahans there, Mark Brame, Henry Draper, they won their class in the last 3 years in Suzuki Swift Class A. Citroën, Peter McLeod will be running a Mazda RX-7 as well, and the GLT version, the non-turbo version of Volvo's 850, we'll see the T5 later. Pulsars there, quite a brace of them, broken up by the four-wheel drive laser turbo TX3 that led the race at one stage. Corollas, the Pintara, unusual, the TRX, the only one of its class running an XR6 similar to Dick Johnson's car that's much further up in the field, grid position 15, and the Mazda 626 of Danny Bogut and Cameron McConville, top racer that raced with Dick Johnson last October. So that's the position on the grid, an all Mazda front row, and indeed a Mazda starting off the second row. We'll be back to have a look at more of the grid and to start the race very shortly. Going forward from position 31 on the grid as they start off now on their warm-up lap. We come to grid position 30 and working our way forward in the field as the field starts to move away now. First time out on the mountain. 2 days ago, an incredible fog. Ford Laser TX3 mixing it with Commodore, six-cylinder Nissan Pulsar, and the first of a number of mid-engine Toyota MR2 sports cars. That's the slowest of them. More Pulsars, the Mitsubishi Lancer GSR, that's a four-wheel drive and a turbo, and the Honda CRX, an old model but a very quick little one. More four-wheel drive Mitsubishi Lancers, the Honda Integra that's been going very well, the new VTI-R, and the Mazda 626 sedan that leads its class, the Ford Falcon of Melrose, that's running on LPG, the Falcon EBSS, another Honda Integra, and yet another Falcon. So getting up into the heavy metal here. The car running second in its class, in the sports car class, the MR2 Toyota of Juan Fangio, Dick Johnson in the XR6, very handy grid position for him. The Group A Rally Toyota Celica, that's four-wheel drive and turbo, and the leading sports car class MR2, grid position 13 of Scott and Jason Bargwana and John Smith. John Smith will start the driving, and this is the eerie scene being seen by the drivers. But down in the pits, one of the drivers' wives, albeit for all his successes here, is no doubt a little bit nervous. John Smales.
And while Peter Brock gets to sit in a comfortable Volvo seat for the next 12 hours, Bev Brock gets this pillow. Bev, it hardly seems fair, doesn't it?
Well, let's put it this way. I'm a bit more comfortable. He's only got a shorter term, but a lot more energetic than us. But
you're stuck here for 12 hours non-stop, aren't you? Have you made your preparations?
We've had all our pit stops already.
Well, that's the scene here.
Yes, that's one of the arts of lap scoring, is to, as Bev says, make pit stops early. 3 minutes to the start of the race. And at the front of the field, of course, is where we expect to see a furious motor race, as we've done in all three previous James Hardie 12 hours. A race that's been led in 3 previous years by a BMW M5, the Ford Laser TX3 Turbo, and have a look out of Peter Brock's Volvo T5 that's starting from 11th grid position. This is the situation.
It's Evan Green here. Good morning, Will Hagan. Good morning, Colin Bond, and good morning, all you BCRs whirring away while the lucky owners are asleep. But Colin Bond, how would you like to be driving out here in the dark? You've done it before.
Well, we have, Will. I think it's great. The morning it's quite a clear morning, actually, for Bathurst. It's a beautiful morning. It's cool, crisp and clear. And I think as the cars come down the straight now, it's going to be one hell of a race. They can run flat out from the front.
just to go through other cars that have led it: Commodore's VN Group A, Mazda RX-7, Porsche 968 CS, and Toyota Supra. So lots of cars. Let's have a look at them down from 12th grid position to first. There's a VN Group A, such as has led the race previously. Seeing for the first time Volvo with their front-wheel drive 850, the T5 Turbo. Peter Brock and Tony Scott. Subaru Impreza four-wheel drive and turbo, 11th grid position, and one of a number of Mazda RX-7s, very popular after winning the race the last 2 years. The expensive Maserati Shamal, very quick, most powerful car in the race. A brace also of Porsche 968 CS's, that almost brand new BMW, only a week old and has done 500 kilometres. And then the front two rows of the grid, three Mazdas and one Porsche. Peter Fitzgerald masterminding the Porsche exercise, helped by Jim Richards, the executive chief of Porsche Cars Australia, Nicholas Lloyd-Wheeler. But up front, Gary Walden, who's won the race twice previously. Mark Scaife, of course, in outstanding form in the Touring Car Championship this year. Greg Hansford victorious in October with Larry Perkins. So some tremendous and successful, proven successful driving talent in the Mazda team. And back in the studio, Tim Webster, less than a minute to the start.
Gracie, just quickly, you've been through this how many thousand times before? What's going through their mind now?
Just to try and be cool and calm. Get it ready, get the revs exactly right. The big eyes on, you see every little thing that occurs, and just wait, be calm, get ready to come out of the box and get up that mountain.
Must be tough not to be nervous.
Yes, but it happens differently. Some people get nervous and it makes them calm and ready for the explosion out of the blocks, if you like. But they've certainly got their big eyes on the lot.
All right, we're getting ready for the big race. Let's go back to our commentators. They're about 20 seconds away from the start. Will?
Among the leading cars, car 1 will be started by Gary Walden. Car 7 alongside him on the front row of the grid will have Greg Hansford driving. Terry Bosanjak will start at Peter Hopwood's car number 8. That's the black and silver Mazda RX-7. Peter Fitzgerald in car 4. Brad Jones in car 14, the second Porsche. Alan Jones in the BMW M3. Alf Grandfather in the Porsche 968 on 7th grid position, number 57. Bill Gillespie in the Maserati Shamal, and Peter McLeod in his car. John Burke in the Subaru as they get away now. They're off on a 12-hour adventure, and one of the Porsches bogs down and doesn't go. Starts moving now, but it's the Mazda from pole position with Gary Walden at the wheel, the man who's been so successful in this race in last years, who's gone to the lead right off the start line, followed by Greg Hansford. And I believe that the instruction from Alan Worsley in the Mazda team is go for it. Try and discourage the opposition. There are no team orders. You are to sprint and hope that we don't destroy the car. There's no orders to conserve them. So off they go on lap 1 of what will probably be a 270-lap journey, something like that, in the 12 hours of this great James Hardie 12-hour, the 4th year of its running.
And a curious problem facing these turbos with the cool morning air. They can become overcharged, Colin Bond. They've got to be very careful in this dense atmosphere.
Well, they can actually, Will. They actually work better when it's cooler, and they go very fast now, but they'd like to get the temperature of the cars up a little bit. Take it easy, if you can take it easy when you're out in front. But just look after the car, particularly for the first couple of laps. Get a bit of temperature into the tyres, into the brakes, and then start working the car hard.
They're getting temperature into the drivers too. You can see them there, they're strung out. Nobody's hot on the tail of anybody else. Nobody's side by side. First lap round, tyres in most of the cars will be cold. Transmissions and engines will be fairly cold. And in the Maserati now, come aboard this Shamal. You're unlikely to get an invitation from an owner of one of these cars, so join us. And let's hear from Bill Gillespie, the driver in the Maserati, but we can't hear from him at the moment. I rather suspect he's wound up and rather applied to the job of that, keeping that 240 kilowatt car, the $235,000 car, on the track, particularly as he has one of their experimental engineers and also engine technicians out from Italy, from Modena, to oversee this exercise. And that's the sort of view that all these 54 drivers are seeing at the moment. Very difficult times trying to race around here. Gary Walden said the other day, some of them seemed as though they were crawling. He said they were very jerky, not slowing, not on line. But that car should have absolutely boomed up the mountain because it has a massive amount of power, well able to outrun its headlights. Some of the drivers, of course, run on high beam. And it's a fairly dazzling business. A hell of a lot of reflection going into mirrors, as you know, Colin Bond.
Exactly. Well, what you're seeing there is from the driver's point of view, but he can actually see a bit better than what we can see because he's been around around the circuit. He knows where the corners are. Nothing's a mystery in that respect. And now he's just coming down to come back on the pit straight, for the first time.
They've got 12 hours to go and maybe 260 laps.
Probably closer to 270, I think. The winning distance last year, 263 up from 254 the previous year. Gary Walden in car 1 leads from Greg Hansford in car 7. Peter Hopwood in Mazda number 8. 3 Mazdas in the first few positions. Alan Jones in the BMW M3. There's a daring hard driver. He's in 4th place. In car number 9, Peter Fitzgerald's the first of the Porsches, followed by John Burke in the Subaru WRX. That got away well. Then Brad Jones in the Porsche that didn't get off the line so well. And Nicholson in car number 21. Now, he's really done well. That's a Commodore. Troy Nicholson in the Commodore that qualified in 12th grid position. He has Peter Brock in behind him. Bill Gillespie in the Maserati Shamal, that's in 10th place. Peter McLeod, Tim Grant, Nick Johnson's in 13th. Hinton, the Barguanas are leading the sports car class, they're 15th. And Juan Fangio 17th.
The ones that impressed me are Alan Jones in the M3 BMW, because that's a car with a pedigree for racing 12 hours, and he's up into 4th place, well positioned, just behind the Mazdas and the Porsche. And the other car with the sensational start is John Burke in the Subaru Impreza, up into 6th place, leading its class, and he's picked up 4 spots already.
It's a good car, those 4-wheel drive cars, to make an alteration online or anything, and so it's a nice reserve if the track's a little bit dewy or whatever. They've got nice little margin in those cars, Colin Bond.
They have. They're a nice car. They feel right. When you turn into corners, you don't get the big understeer, you don't get the big oversteer. They feel safe, and you do get the amount of power you can put down. You can put it down all the time, even in the rain, and this is where they think that particular motor car will really shine if it is going to rain.
It has a reasonably small fuel tank, and fuel stops are going to be a critical factor.
Only 0.36 of a second between the 2 Mazdas from the factory of the BP Visco entered cars. Gary Walden and Greg Hansford across the start line at the end of the first lap. It was 1.2 seconds back from the leader to Peter Hopwood. He was a further gap of... he was a further gap of 1.2, a total of 1.5 behind the leader. So stringing out a little bit at this stage, but I can assure you that as we get the drivers more used to the conditions and the light start to improve as the sun looms up over the horizon in more than an hour from now, as they come round to complete lap 2. Gary Walden's in command. The Mazdas are sprinting. They're trying to disillusion, to upset, to dispirit the opposition. Peter Hopwood's falling back a little way. Those 3 Mazdas are pulling a big lead on Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald. They're in very close company in the BMW and the first of the factory Porsches. It's a long gap back then to the next Porsche. That's pulled up and come through. It's on its own. It's ahead of John Burke now in the Subaru WRX. And then Peter Brock's well placed. And then that Holden Commodore. And then the Maserati Shamal. So already quite a few changes of place on lap 2.
Peter Brock has picked up 2 places in the Volvo. In fact, he's passed the Maserati. And he's up into 9th place. Dick Johnson in car number 17 has also moved up some places in the Falcon. He's running 13th. And that's a good start for Dickie Johnson. Here we are in Melrose's gas-powered Falcon, car number 44. When they stop to change fuel, they'll change the tank. They won't refuel in the pits. They've actually changed the cylinder, so that's the sight we're looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, we haven't seen that before. What they've actually got to do, they can't actually physically put the gas in. That'd be a bit too dangerous. So they're taking the whole car, getting into the boot, take the fuel tank out of it, put another one in, and they reckon they can do it in 15 seconds. We'll have to see, of course.
There's 15 different makes of car in the race, and something like 31 different models or variants of models. So let's have a look at the EV Falcon SS. It's in Class V, 4-litre. The Holdens and Fords have stayed away from their V8s, but the XR6, as you can see there, 161 kilowatts. Well, the V8 only has 165, and much lighter than the V8, better balanced at the front end of the car, good power-to-weight ratio, good fuel consumption, a very handy car. And look at the price of it too. A lot of performance there as we see the first pit stop occurring. And that is the Nissan Pulsar that's going down along pit lane, a car calling in and in trouble already. There it is.
One of 7 Pulsars in the race, but in the meantime, Ian Luff in the gas-powered Falcon is out on the track. Ian, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's actually Mel.
Oh, is that? Hi, Mel. How are you?
Good.
Well, you're doing something quite daring and certainly very different. How do you feel your chances are? Will you have an advantage or a disadvantage through running on gas?
Well, the only advantage that we seem to have is the fact that we can change our fuel tanks a little bit quicker than spilling petrol in the pit lane like some of the other cars are doing. And, you know, we've got our pit stops down, just the fuel tank itself down to 15 seconds. So, you know, if the boys get it all right, you know, that's our only advantage. You know, the old Falcons suffer a bit under brake, so I'm trying to look after them now. That's why I've let a few of these cars go.
I noticed that, Mal, you started in 20th grid position, running 21st at the moment, but plenty more to come, obviously. You have the potential to go as quickly as Dick Johnson's car that kicked off from 15th grid position.
Oh, certainly. Well, the LPG, it's a new initiative. It's it's a different fuel, and we are still testing and tuning, and the power is probably about 10% down on the Dick Johnson XR6. But as you know, this has been a production car for 2 years, and we reckon we've got the balance pretty well set up, the crew's pretty well set up. We're just going to try and, in the first hour, just conserve everything and just make sure it's all bedded in.
Well, maybe that's going to be to your advantage, because this race often is won on the car that does best with brakes and other factors.
Yeah, well, like at the moment, they're pushing it pretty hard at the front. That's why I let them go. You know, I've seen what happens to Falcon brake pads, and I tell you what, it isn't pretty sight, and I don't want to burn the boys' hands before the end of the day.
Great sight there of the lighting that's filtering into the Falcon as Melrose goes along pit straight, and then he heads off into the dark. He hooks it onto Mountain Straight. They've completed 3 laps now. Gary Walden from Greg Hansen from Peter Hopwood. Mazda's 1, 2 and 3. Hopwood in last year's winning car from the factory, and we're following car 8 actually at the moment. That's Peter Hopwood. So he's in 3rd place at this moment, and hanging on well with the leading pair of Mazdas. The car was nearly written off in an accident on the road last week, or at the beginning of this week, Sunday night, when the mechanic was, there's the brakes glowing too, as you can see, and the telemetry shows us the revs the car's doing, the gear changes therefore as the revs come down, and the kilometres an hour speed as they come down off Mountain Straight. He's in 3rd gear at the moment.
I reckon you're getting a better view than the driver. You'll be very much concentrating on the road ahead in the dark here, I'd say.
Peter Hopwood is 4.7 seconds behind the race leader, and 2.3 behind the car immediately in front. That's Greg Hansford.
A very strong
and
team
in behind him. Yes, it is. And now he's building up to high speed. Look at that. He's down towards 250 kilometres an hour, but coming now towards Caltex Chase, 3rd gear, bringing it back, the speed and the gears, and then hooking left in that climbing left-hander, and then finally back onto the last bit of Conrod Straight again, and round to complete 4 laps behind the factory cars. And as Walden goes by, now with quite a good lead.
Did you notice the
second Mazda?
The red disc brakes going there well?
Yes.
Already at this stage of the race.
And Peter Hopwood in 3rd place, so all 3 Mazdas spreading out. Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald still in very close company in the BMW M3 and the Porsche 4th and 5th. Brad Jones is in 6th place in his Porsche. So 2 Porsches now in the top 6, 3 Mazdas of BMW, and quite a gap there. From 6th place, having completed 4 laps, to the 7th place car, not yet by, and that is John Burke in the Subaru WRX. This is the first 4 laps of the 4th James Hardie 12-hour at Mount Panorama Bathurst. And this is the situation, the first 20 places in the race at this stage. You can see the gaps there as well. Porsches, 3 of them in the 2 in the top 6, the Subaru Impreza, Brock in the Volvos, pulled it up well already, and Peter McLeod and his Mazda into the top 10. In behind him, so it's looking very strong for Mazda. That Holden Commodore got a great start, but coming back a little bit. Tim and Alf Brandt, Dick Johnson's moved forward from his grid position, and then finally to round out the top 20, the leading sports car class car, and the 20th place Mitsubishi Lancer GSR. This is a great dice in the James Hardie 12-hour. BMW M3 and Porsche 968, and they're on lap 6. And they are in very close company, and they're arguing over 4th and 5th place. Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald. There you can see the Porsche being lit up. the STP BMW M3 of Alan Jones come round, complete 6 laps. That's the way they've been racing almost since the start. And Alan Grice over there with Tim Webster. The lap times are pretty impressive for this early hours in a 12-hour race, particularly considering the lighting.
Certainly will, and the one that impresses me is the leader. Gary Walden's gone out, a 38 on his first flying lap, a 2 minutes 38 seconds, then a 2 minutes 37, a 2:36, a 2:35.7, which is the fastest lap of the race so far, and then he's been settling into 2:36s while the others have been sort of battling around in 37s and 38s. If he was a bowler, you'd say it was a lovely opening spell.
Yeah, but Alan, what about the problem with the new exhaust systems this year and the perennial problems with the Mazdas and their brakes? You know, they go very hard. They've got to be careful of brakes.
They do.
Is it going too hard, or is this a good pace?
I think I think it's a good pace. I don't think they're going too quickly because remember, with this cool air, they've got that extra power in the early part of the race. But that also, when you get the extra power, the fuel metering system has to tip more fuel in. So I think that their first stop will be the shortest all day, maybe even inside an hour to be safe.
This is a nice time, really, for the turbocharged cars. Plenty of cool air, dense air. The turbo's running unstressed, really. And as you can see, too, Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald really enjoying it. Behind, Gary Walden, Greg Hansford, Peter Hopwood, the 3 Mazdas that lead the race at this stage. That's the fastest lap that Alan Grice was referring to. Done on lap 3 by Gary Walden, averaging nearly 140 kilometres an hour around this 6.213. Very winding and climbing track, up and down 170 metres every lap. 6.2 around. What a superb sight. Absolutely fantastic. The run down off the mountain, down through the Esses towards Forest's Elbow.
And as we watch this great dice between Alan Jones and Peter Fitzgerald.
And another good dice that's going on is in the sports car class, where the fastest qualifier there was John Smith and the Bargwana brothers, Scott and Jason, and they're in very close company with Juan Fangio. John Smith, can you hear us?
Yes, well, how you going, mate?
We're going well. How about you?
We're working away. It's pretty early days yet, but car's doing the job.
I gather Fangio doesn't like you leading them in qualifying and in the race.
Well, I suppose it is a race, isn't it? We're not here to dilly-dally around. If I was in his position, I'd be in the same boat.
So is he giving you some hurry up?
Yeah, I think we're actually working each other. I'm just giving him a bit of a gap, because I think actually we're slowing each other down. I passed him twice, he's passed me twice, so we're square at this stage. But I think I'll just sort of sit back a little bit off him. I think it's pointless us banging around together here with 11 hours to go. And if something happens and we both go off the track, then we'll both be sorry. So I'll just give him about 50 metres on me and hold that station.
John, what are the track conditions like? No dew on the track, or is it slippery?
No, it's quite good. It's once all the debris cleared from all the first couple of laps and blown off, it's quite good, Will.
Have you encountered what the leaders are encountering now that you're already in among lap traffic? Just to liven your day?
Now, John, Evan Green here. You've got a new model MR2 this year. How different is it to the previous one?
It's sensational compared to the old model. It's a lot more stable, a lot more balanced, and the car itself is a little bit more top-end power. They've packed all the power up the scale a fair bit, and we've got full power at about 7,200. The power's on, so it makes a really nice little racing car.
Yeah, well, Toyota have won more classes here than any other make. Are you going to do it again this year?
I think the factory car is very well prepared, of course, and they've got all those good drivers in it, so I'll just have to wait and see how we pan out, but we're quietly confident we can do the job.
Right, you're up there in what, around 14th place or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, I haven't even had a look. I just see the pit board, that's all.
All right, we'll let you get on with the driving, John. I think you're fairly busy.
Okay, well, catch you later on.
Okay.
Those cars also have got limbless diffs in them, which is making them a little bit better to get out of the cutting and that, and they're much more balanced motor cars than what they were in the beginning.
Yeah, a mid-engine car, perfectly configured for racing down a track like Bathurst.
Well, I think one of their biggest favours is that they can actually go through this whole race without changing the brakes, and I think they'd be the only car to do that, and that's because it's mid-engine, and they sort of put a fair amount of brake on the rear of the car. They've got about the same size brakes on the back as they have on the front, which is quite unique. Most of the other cars wear the front brakes out quite dramatically, of course.
Which are the cars with brake problems, the ones in which the drivers have to be very careful how they use their brakes?
Well, I think basically the front-wheel drive cars, because they use up the whole front brakes all the time, and the backs hardly go at all.
We'll talk to you about your career, Colin, which you brought to a close. Alan Gross wasn't planning the same. He was in the Subaru WRX. But Alan, watching the race, what do you see at this stage?
Well, something's happened at the front of the race. Either it's a very bad balk with traffic, but Walden slipped right back to the field. In fact, his last lap was at 2 minutes 40. Now, one would only hope that there's no problem with the car this early in the race. And you've got to remember that overtaking is much, much harder at night. In fact, overtaking is probably the only part of the race at this time that's more dangerous than running in daylight, because as the cars that you're passing, as you come up to lap them, they look in the mirror, they don't see who it is. They don't see that it's a leading car that's overtaking. The two headlights look the same as a car that may be in your class. So they don't necessarily get over and get out of the road.
Yes, once this is established, the first time it happens, well, then they're on the lookout. But the last 2 years, although Mazda's have won it on both occasions, they've also had an early problem in the race, haven't they, Alan?
Yes, they have indeed. They've had problems with turbo pipes blowing off, but I see Walden's gone back to a 2 minutes 37 now, and in fact, Hopwood has slipped out to a 2:40, so I guess my first guess was right. They're having a lot of trouble with traffic. Coming up behind lap cars, all they can see, the slower cars, is two headlights. They don't know who it is, and it's causing a lot of trouble at the front of the pack.
All right, Alan Gross, well, thank you for that. The Peter Hopwood car, of course, number 8, has Terry Bosanjak doing the first stint in it, although it's the winning car from last year, now owned by Peter Hopwood. Murray Carter, incidentally, was that Nissan Pulsar that went to the tail of the field. He's in 54th and last place in car number 18, and he's just completed his 6th lap, where the leaders are now doing 8 and they're on their 9th. And we join the Argentinian nephew of the great Juan Manuel Fangio. This is Juan Manuel Fangio II, and he's driving a Toyota MR2. Now, this has been released in 2 versions. The Bathurst version, and there's the price of that, $44,340, where the old one was $47,770. They've made this one lighter and more powerful. Look at the power increase there, from 117 to 129 kilowatts, the improvement in power-to-weight ratio, and also lighter than the original standard version. Some people are running the older standard version, but there's a luxury version of this car as well. Not the sort that they want to put on the racetrack with its $5,000 flash sound system, but that wouldn't be worrying Juan Fangio at the moment. Good morning, Juan, and welcome to Bathurst once again.
Hi, well, we have a lot of background noises, but I can hear more or less. Everything is going all right by the moment.
Okay, are you getting a lot of glare in your mirrors from drivers on high beam?
I'm sorry, we have a lot of background noises. What do you say?
All right, well, we'll get back to Juan Fangio later. But he is in, as we heard John Smith say earlier, he's having a busy time with John Smith and the 2 Toyota MR2s. Smith's car, owned by the factory. In fact, it was one that journalists used here on a hill climb a little while ago at the introduction of the new range of vehicles. And 54 cars still running in this James Hardie 12-hour. At the tail end of the field, Murray Carter behind Jim Fanico, Chris Kousparis, and up at the front end of the field is Gary Walden, Greg Hansford, but the leading car in Class T, John Burke, and he is 7th outright. This is the situation in that class. Peter Brock doing very well. He's lying 2nd in there. Look at the mix of cars. Some very good ones indeed. Some lovely cars. I love the 4-wheel drive for its stability, and also, of course, the turbos. And that's the second half of the Class T class, with Fanico right down at the bottom of the field. Well, real drama at this early stage in the James Hardie 12-hour, and it concerns the Kent Youlden Volvo GLT. This is the 850, normally aspirated. John Spales has got the story.
Well, the car has come to the pits. The front wheel has come completely off the car. Kent Youlden, what's happened?
Well, I don't know, John. Had a bad vibration coming down the hill, so I rode it in as we come in and got just almost towards the pit lane there, and the corner came off.
So what did you feel when it came off?
Oh, just a bit of a banging sensation, the car tipping over, and we had no brakes then either. That's obviously lost the brake pedal when the corner came off, so I guess I was lucky to make it any.
Well, you're certainly lucky that it came off on the straight, I guess, rather than on a corner.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, thank you. Will, the first big drama of the race, but more to come, I'm sure.
And fallen a long way down in the field at this stage, something like 51st position.
Yeah, it's a great shame. They were counting on reliability to get a score as far as they were concerned.
It had had an early outing. It made its debut at the opening round of the Touring Car Championship at Amaru in January, or was that February? But early in the year anyway, before they brought up the T5, and they ran it there in the standard non-turbo form. So not a lot of problems at this early stage, no problems for the Mazdas as we've seen in previous years, but I can see Tim and Alf Grant in their Porsche coming in, and they'd been running well early on.
We're following the leader now, Well, There's Gary Waldron in the Mazda, who has a best lap of 2:35.7, which is pretty quick in the dark. And one who's really doing well is Peter Brock in the Volvo. He's running in 9th place. Let's go aboard Peter's car and just see how things are looking. Well, there's Peter looking quite intense. As Colin Bond was saying, he's okay. He'd know his way around with his eyes closed. He's been here once or twice. Won at Bathurst more times than any other driver. In a very different car this year, the turbo Volvo, and he's doing better than most people expected. Picked up several places, having a chat to his pits, but he can't talk to us as we follow him on car cam. And while we're up in the mountain with Peter Brock, let's go down to the pits where John Smales is waiting.
And the Alf Grant car is in the pits, as you can see, and it's had a ding in the front left-hand side. Alf, what happened?
Evan, on the Castrol turn, just approaching Castrol, turned in and the tyre let go. It just blew it just let go in a vicious fashion.
It hit the wall?
Yep, couldn't avoid the wall.
So how's the car steering now for you?
No, it won't be too good. That received a pretty hard sort of impact.
What a shame this early in the event.
It surely is.
Alf Grant's problems, Will, more coming up.
Alf Grant, I was talking to him just a little while ago. He bought the car through Porsche Car Australia. Peter Fitzgerald did the roll cage for him. They did some testing only a few weeks ago. It's literally a brand new car. It was brand new. It's not so brand new now. And a great shame because really they qualified it very well. And car 57 was in 7th grid position. It's a great effort by a privateer in a car that hadn't had a lot of development and testing.
No. Well, it's a sobering thought, Will. We've got 11 and a half hours to go. Murray Carter has called in with gearbox troubles. Kent Gulden has lost a wheel on the Volvo. Alf Grant has had a tyre blow and hit the fence. So what will happen in the next 11 and a half hours?
Yeah. Actually, it's quite unusual for a tyre to blow, particularly this sort of tyres. They usually wear quite well, so unless he's picked something up on the road and sort of got a puncture out of it to cause it. But now I see they're changing the strut in the car, and they'll get the car going again very soon.
Well, in car number 15, that's the Spirit of Logan entry from Queensland. It's a Falcon EV SS. Terry Skeen and Chris Madden, and on the phone after qualifying 17th is Chris Madden. Good morning, sir. How are things going? Yeah, we're well. Are you happy with your position at the moment?
Yeah, mate, everything's going to plan. We're just trying to do steady laps at this stage.
In 17th place, are you going to try and go a little bit harder when you get more light?
Yeah, we will, but it's a long race. There's another 11 and a half hours to go, so plenty of time to sort of move up during those hours.
Well, you're keeping good company. You've got Juan Fangio 2 places ahead of you and Kevin Burton in another Falcon immediately in front. Any wish to get out after him at this stage?
Well, I think we're sort of doing a bit of a cat and mouse game here, leave the review, and then I'll probably take over when he's been behind for a while.
All right, Chris Madden, well, thank you. Keep going in 15th, car number 15 in 17th place there. This is the split between Chris Madden that we were talking to there and very nearly a lap behind the race leader, although he's in 17th place. 2 minutes 26 seconds, and that's a superb effort from the timing system that we have here. We can get all sorts of information from it. We know that Gary Walden's fastest lap remains the fastest lap of the race, and that was his third lap, that he continues to lead the race and does so by 1.6 seconds over his teammate Greg Hansford in the second Mazda, running not so far behind him, and Terry Bosanjak in third place. Let's have a look, in fact, at the entire situation now in the James Hardie 12-hour after just over 34 minutes of running. 11 laps completed by the race leaders. That's the gap, first to second. A race at the moment being dominated by Mazdas, 3 of them in the top 4. The BMW M3 not with a lot of testing and well placed ahead of both of the Porsches at this stage. Poor start for the second of those. Peter McLeod's going well, the Subaru Impreza also. And if they keep running reliably, they should go well. Brock's done a great performance so far, and the Maserati Shamal slipped back a little bit from its qualifying position. Dick Johnson's come forward from his, and the Toyota Celica Group A rally car in 12th place. That's a handy car. The best of the Holden Commodores, and in behind, that is a V8, but most of the Commodores and Falcons running are 6s, and leading the sports car class there. Following up in it is Fangio, and with Neil and Rick Bates and Kevin Burton. We were talking to him, and then Chris Skeen and Chris Madden and Skeen's Falcon with the Honda Integra behind it. That's in the sports car class with the Toyota MR2s, Mitsubishi Lancer, more four-wheel drive and turbo cars, but not keeping pace with the Subaru Impreza, more expensive and more powerful of those cars, the most recent on the market. Leading Class B, the Mazda 626 there. Ken Douglas commentating with us last year and going very well, and then running further through. Down in the pits, though, and interested in the progress of Terry Vosenjak in car number 8, is lying in third place at the moment, nearly 10 seconds behind the race leader. Is the man that owns the car that saw $30,000 worth of damage happen to it early this week, almost a tragedy, Peter Hopwood.
And a concern for Peter Hopwood in car 8, lying in third position. Peter, what's wrong with the brakes?
Well, there's nothing actually wrong with them, but we're a little concerned because we can see both as going past the pits here and on television that they're running hotter than the other Mazdas. Now, we're just a bit concerned about that. I've spoken to Terry, who's in the car, and he says that he's driving it the same in practice as we did in practice, so we shouldn't have too much problems, but it's just a bit of a worry because it's the first time we've seen them that bright.
Is he saying that he's got pedal problems?
No, they're working fine. We're just conscious of not using them too hard.
Early morning concerns for Peter Hopwood.
Well, if only he started in daylight, he mightn't have noticed the glowing brakes.
Well, you picked that up earlier, Colin.
Well, I did actually. They did look a bit hotter than the other cars. I'm noticing now that the front-running Mazdas are getting hot as well, so the temperature's into them. The Mazdas have got to run a bit faster than what the Porsches are running because they're going to do a lot more pit stops. They can only go an hour, whereas in actual fact, the Porsches can nearly go 2 hours on their fuel. So they've got to have at least a second, maybe 2 seconds a lap advantage each lap to build up the time they need so that when they come into the pits they'll lose time again, of course.
EIO race time just over 37 minutes, and Colin over the other side of the track, one of your old sparring partners, Alan Gross. Alan, how do you see it shaping at this stage?
One of the impressive runs early has not only been Walden but also Alan Jones in the BMW. I think everybody here would have bet that it'd be a couple of Mazdas out front and then a couple of Porsches. But Jonesy has really put in a very good opening stint, and he's 6 seconds in front of the 2 Porsches. And remember that he will go about the same distance on fuel. So he's actually pulling away from the Porsches just slightly. He's pulled out that gap and pulling away. And the other thing I noticed about the car is that the brakes aren't, the brakes have a lot of material on them, so he won't be looking at changing brakes very often too. He's working himself into a nice position, I think, particularly with regard to the Porsches.
He's only 16 seconds behind the leader, so that he is very well placed in a strategic sense.
Yes. But the lead Porsche, I'm sorry, is 23 seconds behind. So how do you see those gaps in terms of what Colin was talking about, Alan? Time for the Mazdas to make their extra pit stop on the Porsches. Who's in the better position there in that gap, 23 seconds from the leading Mazda to the leading Porsche?
Well, certainly Bondi is quite right in that they do have to have faster lap times. They do have to build a cushion because they will be stopping more often. However, I was watching some brake patch and disc changes with the various teams during yesterday, and the Mazda boys were changing, were doing a full change on the car, including discs and calipers, in 1:15. Now that's pretty hot sort of stuff, and
hot indeed.
Yeah, it's superb stuff, and if they can do that and get in and get out, it could very much, although it's a 12-hour race, can be won or lost in the pits and how many times in. Because the other thing to remember that if the Porsche doesn't go exactly 2 hours, if it goes something under 2 hours, but the Mazdas do get an hour, then it makes all the computations interesting late in the day. So it's certainly something to watch all day.
here at Bathurst is just on 21 minutes to 6. There's the first hint of dawn in the sky at the moment. And Colin Bond, the half-light of morning might be rather difficult in some areas here where you're rising up the hill into the sun.
It is, but it's not as bad as I think in the afternoon going up mountain straight into the sun, which they will be doing later on in the day, of course. But it's a nice time, I think, when you can start to see a little bit better. The lights, I mean, they're getting used to the circuit now because they've been driving around for quite some time, and you get into the swing of things. It's just the first couple of laps you need to get yourself into gear, to get the car into gear, and then settle down to a pace that you want to try and run the race at. Everybody has sort of sat down, worked out with their teams how fast they should run the race, so their strategies, which they're now trying to achieve, I guess, and it's all works from fuel consumption back to tyre wear, back to brake wear, and that type of thing.
Really interesting to see some of those cars going along there, but the BMW's in the pits, and Alan Jones from 5th place in the race, leading the Porsches behind the leading Mazda. Peter Fitzgerald's come through now and taken 4th place. We're waiting for Brad Jones to do the same. But this is not good news. It's only 40 minutes of racing
and just rocking
14
the car.
laps completed.
And rocking the car, I assume, Colin, to stop the disc brakes from burning with the car station. But no, he's that is not a good sign. We were saying how well he's going. He's the first of the front runners to come into the pits. Check something under the bonnet, and off he's gone again.
I think it's a good sign in one respect because it was a very quick stop, and they knew there was nothing major. They didn't put any fuel in, which is quite unusual, because every time you normally would stop, you put fuel in. But obviously, Alan, a spark plug lead or something may have just come off. He's just rushed into the pits. They've put it back on again. They're rocking the car because the brakes get so hot. They can get up to 800 degrees C. Yeah. And if they actually come in and put the brakes on while they're stationary, they'll actually weld themselves to the actual disc, and you won't go.
The only cars he's let through are the 2 Porsches of Peter Fitzgerald, car 4, and Brad Jones in car 14. Alan Jones went back out in that BMW number 9 in 6th place ahead of Peter McLeod, John Burke, and Bill Gillespie in the Maserati Cheval. We'll be back to Mount Panorama very shortly. The Alan Jones BMW into the pits out of 4th place, went back out, but had told his pits he'll be back to have the rear brakes done, and he's in now for a service. And there he is, and John Spales with him.
Yeah, Will, the problem is the rear brakes for certain. Jones came in, as you said, he reported it to race chief Neil Lowe, told Jones to go back out, and he drove a full lap with the rear brakes locked on. He's now been in the pits for 2 minutes exactly. The problem is at the rear end. They've taken the rear calipers off. They've replaced them entirely. There has been a bit of overflow of brake fluid, so they're having to pump the brakes up as well. You can see Jones working at pumping the brakes inside the car at the moment. He's ready to go at 2 minutes and 16 seconds, but that is a real disaster for the BMW team.
Very bad luck for a fascinating car in this race, and one that was shaping to be very consistent and to be a real threat later in the day in among the Mazdas and the Porsches and the Maserati Cheval and so on. We'll give you an update when our chart comes around. In fact, it'll be the end of the next lap before we get a true count on where he is, as we still see this wonderful nighttime scene on lap 18, 17 completed, with Alan Jones slipping when he came into the pits to 7th place. But we'll get a full report on that. Craig Denyer, welcome to work.
Thank you, Will.
Dreadful hour of the day, but a fascinating race.
It is a fascinating race, and Colin, you mentioned earlier it was very strange to see problems on the rear brakes of Alan Jones' BMW.
It would be. I guess there's something going wrong with the rear brakes. They've either got these dry brake systems, they can disconnect the brakes. One of those could fail and lock on as well.
But we're going to an even more exotic car than the BMW M3. This is the Maserati Cheval.
Bill.
And let's have a look at the specifications of this car, should anybody be tempted to think that you'd like to shell out $220,000 in Class X. Now, fascinating engine. V8, twin-turbo, 3.2 litres, results in 240 kilowatts. The best power-to-weight ratio just about of anything in the race. A reasonably heavy car, big fuel capacity, and Colin Bond, not perhaps as well sorted as some of the others, but in basic specifications, enormous potential.
Oh, I agree, Will. I think the problem you've got here, you've got the Mazdas, this is their third year they've been running, so they can perfect it year in, year out, and they know exactly where they're going. This is a brand new motor car, it arrives for the first time. They've done a lot of testing, of course, but testing is one thing, racing's another. You can sort of work out your fuel consumption, your brake wear, roughly. Until you actually get in the race, you're never quite sure how it's going to go, what the tyre wear is going to be like, and what the brake shoes are going to like, as we saw on the BMW, for argument's sake,
It's a magnificent motor car, and on the line is Bill Gillespie. Bill, it's Craig Denyer and Colin Bond in the commentary tower. How is that magnificent Maserati Shamal travelling?
No, it's going pretty well. Thanks, Craig.
$220,000 worth of motor car, Bill. It must be the most comfortable ride around Mount Panorama.
Yeah, it's great. I just can't get used to driving something worth more than my own house at home. It's unbelievable.
Bill, we know the suspension hasn't been sorted out. You haven't done much pre-race testing, but it must be marvellously quick in a straight line. What's your top speed looking like at this stage?
Well, it depends if I don't get things like this in front of me. It's not his fault, but it's just hard to get past him, that's all. If you get a good run down the straight, you should hit 250.
So you're 2 minutes and 5 seconds behind the Mazda that's leading the race. Are you worried about that sort of gap at this stage, or are you just doing your own race strategy?
No, we're just doing our own thing. We really, there's no way we're going to run like Mazda pace. I mean, those boys have been here for 3 years now. They've got the things very well sorted out. And they've got, obviously they've got top drivers in the cars. They've got their strategy and we've got ours, and that's the way it's going to be today, I'd say.
Bill, last year you finished third outright in the Nissan GTR, which of course is also a supercar. What's essentially the difference between the two cars at Mount Panorama?
Well, I think this car's a little easier to drive if you're just used to driving rear-wheel drive cars, because the four-wheel drive does take some getting used to. That's probably the major difference, I'd say.
All right, Bill Gillespie, thank you very much. As he goes past the pits, down in the pits is John Smales with the other driver from the BMW M3, John Bowe.
To make brake changes faster and easier, the teams use what's called a dry brake system. That means they can take the whole caliper system off just simply by removing one cable. But John Bowe, the technology failed.
Well, to be technical, which I'm not, apparently what happened is the dry brake fell off, which left the caliper seized almost on the disc, so he had full brake on one side, which just overheated the fluid and made it even worse. So the left rear brake was seized on, so they had to, as a matter of course, come and change all the others just to make sure they knew what was going on. With any luck, it'll be right for the rest of the race, but why it failed, I don't know. We haven't had a problem all week.
A little difficult to drive it like that too, John.
Sorry?
A little difficult to drive it like that too.
Well, I don't know whether you've driven a car with 3 brakes, but it wouldn't be very pleasant. I'm glad he was in there, not me.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Alan Jones car slipped back to 20th place too now, Will?
Yes, 20th place for car number 9, the BMW M3. The James Hardie 12 hours been on for nearly 51 minutes, and this is the situation in the top 20 of the 54-car field. There are the gaps. That's electronically timed by transponders. It's not a guess, it's deadly accurate, and you can see Mazda still dominating, but the 2 Porsches coming into 4th and 5th behind their challengers all through the race last year. Another Mazda in 6th, and then look at that collection of lovely luxury cars to round out the top 10. Dick Johnson joining them in the XR6. That's a great performance early on in the race. Then the S-Class cars, the MR2s, and further down, the last of the 20, which is Alan Jones in the BMW M3.
James Hardie 12 Hour is proudly brought to you by BP Visco 5000 Motor Oil, Ultimate Engine Protection, the new Toyota Celica, it's turned savage, Coca-Cola, proud sponsors of the James Hardie, and Mobil, looking after tomorrow today.
What a glorious view out over this lovely Western Plains country, 200 kilometres west of Sydney. Lovely to have you with us this morning as we go into the 56th minute, just over 55 minutes now, in this 4th James Hardie 12 hour. And the leader is scheduled to pit, and he's done so. It's Gary Walden, and that's not him, obviously. That's the Ron Macing GSR, but that's the race leader, Gary Walden. This is a security one to ensure that as Gary Walden stays in the car and they blast away, they wanted to know how much fuel it took. They should go longer than that, but headed at least for probably 12 pit stops in the race. depending on how long they can go in the next stop, just to make sure they didn't run out. They purposely ran out the other day, and there's a lovely sight. As the Mazda comes out onto the track, you can see the other traffic it has to face, including the Porsches, and it's out after them. So the race lead now is Hansford, Boz and Jack, then the two Porsches, then Mazda number 1, John Smales in the pits.
The pit stop, Will, took 25.63 seconds, which was very fast indeed. However, it happened 4 minutes before the 1 hour mark, and that could be real problems for the Mazdas if they can't get to the 1 hour mark each time. It'll cost them time.
Well, they were being conservative about that. They were doing it early, and Alan Horsley said earlier, it depends on the temperature of the day. It's much warmer this morning than it was last year, he said. And so he's waiting to see how it all evolves. But certainly, if they don't get to an hour each time, then it will mean extra.
Well, they've got two cars too. Well, they'd like to get one car in early and get it back out. So the second car, when it came in, they'd have a clear passage for it to get and do the same thing. So obviously, you know, the Hansford car will be coming in, obviously, maybe this lap, or it may be able to go for another lap and get to the hour.
Notice they lifted the bonnet too, Colin, topped up the oil. Is that a common precautionary thing with an RX-7?
No, it is with turbocharged cars. They start using a little bit of oil, so if you just keep topping it up and keeping the oil up to it, and it just, you know, it's going to work better at the end of the day. They've obviously, because they've run here before, worked out what the oil consumption is like over the race, and they just get to know, and I think that they'll just sort of do that every time the car comes in. They'll just add, it may be half a litre, maybe a litre, I'm not sure, but that's what they're doing.
So we can expect to see the second Mazda RX-7 too, the BP Visco Mazda RX-7 in a matter of another 5 minutes.
I would think so. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see it actually come in this lap, and there it goes.
There it goes. Greg Hansen, so this hands the lead. We've had two race leaders now, car numbers 1 and 7. We will now have Peter Hopwood, Terry Bosenjack in car number 8. And the Porsche's coming up into second and third at this stage, but another quick stop precautionary one for Mazda. 58 minutes running, the James Hardie 12 hour. Greg Hansford saying, I want some attention. Serviceman, come here. Probably wants some jam ready for his croissants for breakfast.
You can actually see how the disc brakes are still glowing red hot too on those front wheels, even though the car's stationary in the pits. John Smales is in the pits with all the action.
And the times are getting quicker. The Mazda stop that time was 24.6 seconds. Peter McLeod in the Slick 50 Mazda is also in. So I'd say with 3 Mazdas in before the 1 hour mark, yeah, I reckon they've got a fuel consumption problem.
So we wait to see how all that evolves. And you can see them now, and Peter Brock in the Volvo T5 is in very close company with John Burke. Look at him just up in front in the Subaru WRX Turbo, 4-wheel drive car. Both of these are turbos. You can hear a little bit of a whistle, I think, out of Brock's car, and running very well in the race, both of them. This is very much a lovely luxury car, leather trim, a bit of wood grain, and for $68,500, it's a pretty attractive package. In fact, it's only a few $1,000s more expensive than the non-turbo GLT that we saw come into the pits earlier. But look at the power output that you get through the turbo, and then the power-to-weight ratio of 8.3. It makes it a very hot little package indeed, not overly heavy. And Peter Brock obviously reveling in it because he's lying 9th in the race at this moment. John Burke just in front of him is in 8th, and you'll see glimpses of Burke. There he is, and he chases again.
You can just see again how well Peter Brock drives off the mountain. He poured up an awful lot of ground. But down the straight, you may find the other car now, being the little the Subaru, just getting away, or they seem to be holding about the same speed. But I think it's, you know, it's just Brock in the car that's making this car really fast.
It's the only production car in the world with a 5-cylinder transverse engine. Revs to about 6,500 revs down the straight, but obviously heaps of run for a 5-cylinder engine in that Colin.
Well, turbochargers do, you know, obviously make these cars go an awful lot faster than what you would normally think that a car can go. And the turbocharged cars have been winning, you know, every year. So it's certainly, when you start looking at performance motor cars, you really can't beat the turbocharged.
Cheeky effort by Terry Bosenjack there, diving down inside him. So let's have a look at the field overall as Bosenjack and Peter Brock head round to the start-finish line. The transponders on their scoring system check over another race. But over in the studio is Tim Webster. Good morning, Tim. You still with us?
I'm still here, Will. I'm sitting next to Gracie, and we're just enthralled here. In fact, Gracie was just saying Peter Brock's really sending that Volvo around there.
Yes, he's making a lot of difference between the two marks. Really, the Subaru should be a lot further in front of the Volvo, but Brocky's just hanging in. He'll monster him all day and get past him on that.
All right, let's go back to the start. If you've just joined us, to the beginning of this James Hardie 12 Hour, they started in the dark, and boy, did they rip off that grid. Here we go. All right, highlights of the race. Let's go right back to the beginning. I've got Gracie here to talk us through it as we start the James Hardie 12 Hour for 1994, and off they go, Al.
Yes, as predicted, the Mazda jumped straight into the lead. We knew that they'd be doing that because they've got this fuel problem. Well, it's not a fuel problem, but they'll need a lot more stops than the Porsches and the BMW. The BMW, in fact, early in the race was looking very, very good. Pulled out 6 to 12 seconds on the Porsches, and then fell into a problem with rear brakes.
Are there problems, if any, driving this hour today?
The main problem is when you come around to lap cars, because they can't see who it is that's coming. It could be the leader, it could be a car that they're actually competing with in their own class. So all they see is two lights. The only extra danger, added danger, is that people don't know who's coming up behind them.
And plenty drive with high beams, so a lot of glare in that rear vision.
A lot of glare, and there's still a lot of drivers, you know, that have the opinion that once the road is behind them, it's already been used. Yeah. So there's why look at it.
And quite a few problems, and rare, in the first hour of the race for quite a few cars.
Particularly a surprise with the BMW coming in with a problem with, I believe, a major leak in a rear brake caliper, but that's been changed in the back out there, and it's still early days for them.
Yeah, Murray Carter had some gear problems, and they dropped the wheel on the Volvo, so unusual for this.
Well, certainly that'd be very disappointing to have a Volvo. That wasn't Brock's Volvo, that was the other, of course, the non-turbo version. Yep. But terribly disappointing to have that happen in the early part of a race.
Now, when you say fuel problem, not necessarily that much of a problem for the Mazdas, but they're coming in before the hour. Serious or not?
No, I think that was always planned. In this cool, crisp air, the turbos develop a lot more power, therefore the engine management system puts in a lot more fuel. So the worst run, or the worst economy they'll get, is this very first session.
We've got Jimmy Richards sitting next to us. You mic'd up, Jimmy? Can we hear you? Yes.
Yes.
How are you? Welcome to the show. We can't see you just yet. We're taking pictures. Jimmy, you happy with the way the Porsche's going?
Yes, very happy. We're sort of scheduled the stops of every 2 hours if possible. So going on those stops, we should gain some time on the Mazdas in the pits.
Having a good dice there with Alan Jones for a while till he struck some problems.
Yes, I think people would have liked to have got clear of Alan because that sort of held him up for a little while.
All right. We go back to, this is the early morning hours, of course, of the race, and at this stage it was the Mazda RX-7s that were really ripping around.
Well, this is the Maserati in 10th spot, 133 off the lead. There's Jonesy coming into the pits. Now that's the first time he came in, I think. Seen him rocking the car. He's already told them that the brakes are locked on. They're trying to unlock them. Now the team manager looks under the bonnet and says, yes, I know what it is. You'll have to go around another lap and we'll be ready for you when you come in.
I guess with a car that new, it's just bugs.
It is, and I think it's disappointing too. They haven't had much help from the manufacturer there. Neville Crichton's brought the car in, air freighted the car in, thank you very much, more than $200,000. He's a big effort. He's got two of the best drivers in the country, Alan Jones and John Bowe, driving. It's a shame they've run into a little problem with that early in the piece.
Yeah, they've got it back out there, so we can only hope that it improves through the day.
Yes, indeed, and all those niggling things are the types of things that happen the first time you race a car.
Yeah. Jim Richards, I suppose it's a matter of just staying out there and staying on the pace.
Well, I think you've got to really stay out there and have no unscheduled stops at all. And if that happens at the end of the race, you're going to be looking pretty good.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't have too many problems, should you?
Well, no, we hope not. After all, they are production cars. They should go 200,000 k's without any problems, so 12 hours shouldn't hurt them.
Yeah, when you say they are production cars, that's the point we make to our viewers. Just quickly, what sort of modifications are made for safety on the cars?
Well,
not too many?
No, not too many. We've got a complete roll cage system in the car, fire extinguisher, a lot better brake pads. But basically, that's about all. I don't think we've even blueprinted the engines on the Porsche. They're just as they come from the factory.
Yeah, all right, Phyllis. We'll take a break from you two and tell you about, at home, this magnificent competition of ours for you to win a brand new Bathurst model MR2 from Toyota. Here's how you do it.
For your chance to win the adrenaline-pumping Toyota MR2 Bathurst, all you have to do is call this number, 0055 60208. Be just like Fangio in your own race-proven Toyota MR2 Bathurst. The winner will be announced today, just after the winner has crossed the line in the James Hardie 12-hour. So call 0055 60208 to be in the draw for Toyota MR2 Bathurst. And keep watching 10's live and exclusive coverage of the James Hardie 12-hour. Watch the mountain erupt right here on 10. Oh, what a feeling, Toyota.
What a feeling, what a prize that would be. Well, that's the first hour of the James Hardie 12-hour. Will Hagan, as I throw back to you, Alan Grice has just made the comment that Terry Bosenjack is still out there. Got 3 laps on the other 2 cars. Interesting.
Yes, very interesting indeed. In fact, the Slick 50 Mazda of Peter McLeod's had a problem. He's been in the pits for some while and boiling, or it looked like that. There seemed to be a fair bit of steam out. You've seen the BMW M3 back, but have a look at that situation. There's the Peter McLeod one, and not a happy sight. He was in 7th place in the opening laps that we saw from that highlights piece earlier. Down in the pits with the action, John Smale.
Peter McLeod has in fact lost a radiator hose, which caused him a huge spin out on the track. Peter, what happened?
Well, I don't know, but by the look of things, it's been a radiator hose, and obviously I spun in my own radiator water. I just came around the corner. We were sitting well in 6th place, I think, and catching some of the leaders, and all of a sudden the car just disappeared from under me, but it kept it off the wall, I think. But obviously the damage of the radiator hose has got to be repaired. Incredible thing, a $10 radiator hose, and this is the result.
Well, the result is that McLeod has lost more than 5 minutes so far in the pits, because it's very difficult in the heat of that engine to get to the hose to get it back on.
Yes, he's had a lot of problem with this car over the past 3 weeks. They've actually had a turbo boost problem, which they haven't been able to chase for some time. And Peter purchased the car off the Mazda team. It was a car that won this race back in 1992, but it had this strange boost problem where it's intermittently been cutting out for about the last 2 or 3 weeks. So despite a lot of testing, they haven't been able to cure that problem.
Look at the dice there in the sports car class with the John Smith in the MR2. Look at him tucked in behind the yellow MR2, the Vogue Living one of Juan Fangio. Going up the hill there, you can see all sorts of other makes and models, but this is a dice that's been on almost since the opening part of the race. John Smith said, I don't want to get involved in dice. We're slowing each other up. And then 2 race drivers couldn't stay apart, Colin Bond. You know how hard Smithy goes. Gee, that was nearly a write-off of the Juan Fangio car. Gee whiz.
Yeah, I think
he nearly wiped it along the wall.
Well, he did. He just missed his apex at turning into the corner, unless the car's not just turning in for him, Will. And it was very close. I mean, he has a lot of experience. I think the experience, he pulled all of it then to keep it off the wall.
You've won this class in one of these cars previously with John Smith. Bondi, they're a great car to drive.
They are. We actually, the first time we ran an MR2 in the first race, and we won the class in the 6th outright, of course. And they were a beautiful little motor car. They're very well balanced cars. You can drive them flat out all day. They'll go 2 hours on their fuel. As I said, they'll go without putting any pads in them, and that's quite unusual.
It's astonishing. They're 2-litre normally aspirated. These 2 cars are lying 10th and 11th in the race. And let's have a look down the mountain to see if Fangio wants to slip up again.
I'll expect these 2 to do this for the entire race.
I don't know. Smithy's looking pretty good here. I think Smithy's sitting in behind saying, look, he's holding me up. And I don't know. I'm just looking at the other car. Smith's car appears, in my opinion, to be handling better. And he's doing it easier. Fangio, I don't think he's trying any harder than Smithy, but the car is just not doing what he wants it to do.
So 10th and 11th place being argued about here, and Smith getting the tow, getting the draft. Watch for him to pull out down towards the Caltex chase, putting an enormous amount of pressure on Juan Fangio the second, and here he goes. Have a look at the long distance view of it, and from the inside, this is it. So John Smith comes through, Toyota car cam, and they're coming up onto one of the Ford Lasers. But that's been an enthralling battle between those 2 cars. John Smith, you're keeping Juan Fangio a bit busy there. He's got a map of the track on the dashboard there. You can see it down at the bottom right of frame. I wonder if it tells him when to change gears. But that's a beauty. Let's have a look at the Class S situation. The MR2s ahead of the Honda Integra, more MR2s and another Integra. So that's the top 5. 3 of one make, 2 of the other, and the battle continues. 10th and 11th outright. Let's have a look at the Tiddlers, the cheapest cars in the race. Class A, that was the fastest qualifier. It remains the race, or the class leader. And the Suzuki GTI couldn't qualify as fast, is 10.5 seconds behind. Then the Corollas, the remainder of the Swifts, and finally the tail end of it, the Hyundai Lantra. Race leader to 5th place for Terry Voss and Jack in Peter Hopwood's car number 8, the car that won the race last year. But back in the lead now is Gary Walden ahead of Peter Fitzgerald in the Porsche. Things getting really mixed up. The Porsche still lurking. And of course, once the Mazdas have done a stop, if they can reassert their lead before they do their next stop, well, they're starting to look good. But this car back down into 5th place. But the important and significant thing, Colin Bond, and Jim Richards over with Tim Webster as well, is that it went 1 hour and 11 by comparison. The factory car's running conservatively for their first stop, but if the Mazda can run that long, Jim Richards, perhaps it's a bit of a problem for the Porsches?
Well, we hope not, Will, but you know, we plan to sort of get 2 hours, so whether the Mazda can actually keep that up the whole race distance, we get to see.
What do you think as you see it at the moment in terms that Gary Walden's back in the lead, Peter Fitzgerald hasn't yet hit the lead, he's in 2nd place at the moment?
No, I don't think there's any trouble at the moment because we're actually right behind the lead car. We've got 1 stop to go, and of course when we stop, Gary will have to stop again straight away, so things aren't going to change much up the front for a fair old while.
All right, interesting race, Jim. Do you see it being as hard and as close as it was last year?
Well, I didn't actually come up here last year, but from what I've seen on the tally, I think it's going to be closer this year than it was last year.
There is a big one for car number 27, Craig Dare. That's the turbo 4-wheel drive TX3. Chris Clearahan is his other driver, and as you can see, it's probably actually more dramatic than it seems because the bumper bar's fallen off it, but it's been a big whack on the right-hand side as well. Chris Clearahan, that's sharing the car, was the inaugural winner of pole-to-pole air race, Craig Denyer.
Yes, he's from Canberra. Been around motor racing a long time.
Too.
And actually, Chris was in the car, you're right, but recently won pylon air racing, and he's the Australian champion, and here's a replay of it coming up right now, so you can see a little laser sideways.
Wow.
Oh, and he's just about taken one of the Falcons with him, I think.
Dick Johnson crash territory, the Hyundai.
Yeah.
That's where Kevin Bartlett went years ago in the Camaro and got upside down, and
what happened there, Colin Bond? Coming through Reed Park, tail came out on the car.
I don't know whether there was another car involved behind that might have gave me a little bit of a push, because I couldn't see why the car would want to sort of deliberately go that far in that particular bit of the road. It's a right-hand kink for sure, but there may have been another car involved.
And Colin, we've got Peter Brock in the pits, car 05, the Volvo with a driver change. Now this is the car that actually has been leading. Class B took over from the John Burke car, now down to John Smales.
And Peter Brock is getting out of the car. Tony Scott's going into it. This car has now done 1 hour and 15 minutes of racing only. They were hoping for a little bit longer out of this car. They were trying to get to the 90-minute mark, and in fact, we're looking at about 85 minutes yesterday. They're doing a brake change as well this early in the event. Now, I wouldn't have expected a brake change from the Volvo, which was going to rely on reliability this early in the event. It's only a front brake change, so it's not all 4, but it's been going almost 41 seconds so far. Brock looking worried. He's talking to Scott about the brakes. Scott's still trying to get into his harnesses. So a fairly leisurely stop. 51 minutes upcoming, 53. Calipers now going on the car. I'll get to Brock as soon as the stop is completed. But a worry for the Volvo team because they really did want to get to that 1.5 hour mark before they stopped for fuel. It could be that the brake problem has brought Brock in early and the fuel is okay. We'll wait and see what happens in that regard. While we wait for it, incidentally, a possible concern for the Mazda team. They were running apparently, and I didn't see this, but they were running apparently without their lights on in the pre-dawn. Alan Horsley held out a sign saying lights on. The pits are abuzz about that, because that could be something which is a cause for protest from the Porsche team or anybody else in contention later in the day, because apparently it was outside the regulations. You might like to look into that, Will Hagan. I'll go to Peter Brock almost immediately. This stop is now a long one, 1 minute and 52 seconds going. And Peter, what brought you in? Was it the brakes or fuel?
Fuel. Just ran out of fuel. I think George is having a look at the brakes. I think he probably thought, let's just put them in and measure the wear and get ourselves on track. No, the car's running nicely.
You only got to 75 minutes on fuel, Peter. Is that a concern for you?
No, that's about what we think.
You were going for 90 minutes. That's what the team was trying to get out of it yesterday.
If you go for 90 minutes, you lose 2 seconds a lap. So we calculated it's quick to come in for fuel. You save something like 4 or 5 minutes in the race, and you can certainly put a tank full of juice in 4 or 5 minutes. So we decided to go for this speed.
Lying in 7th place in the race when they started their pit stop, out fully fettled now, like the Mazdas coming in at 55. To have a look at their fuel consumption, that coming in, as you can see there, the Porsches both squeezing by, but coming in to, and the Mazda there too. What an array of cars. In the case of the Volvo, they were having a look at the brake pad situation. They could do a full assessment now, having retained the brake pads that did the first hour and a quarter. But that was the information I had from Peter earlier today as we go into the car. They'd go an hour and a quarter, they'd drop too much time. If they went for the greater fuel consumption, their lap time would come back too much. But let's have a look in Class B. It's the most populous car class in the race. The fastest qualifier was the Ken Douglas car, the Mazda 626, leading a brace of Nissan Pulsar Triple S's. Look at them with another 626 there, both of them sedans, because there's hatchbacks available as well. Peter McLeod's Citroen's lying 6th in the class, and behind that top 10 there's still more cars in the class, with the 850 GLT Volvo out of the race.
And if you've just joined the James Hardie 12-hour race for this year, welcome to Bathurst. And it's now dawn, the cars are visible, we can see what's going on, they can see what's going on, and the race is now 1 hour and 24 minutes in duration. A lovely morning here in Bathurst, oldest inland city in Australia, and here's the leader of the race, Gary Walden. He had a pit stop, lost his lead, but the other cars behind him have all stopped for fuel, and Walden in the RX-7 is back in front again, going very wide there as he climbs up the mountain. And Craig Denyer, these Mazdas are very impressive, aren't they?
Yes, they've dominated this race for the last 2 years, Evan, and particularly Gary Walden in car 1. He's actually going for a hat-trick of wins this year, which would be a tremendous effort. He's a quiet, unassuming, underrated production car driver, Colin Bond, and lives on the New South Wales Central Coast. Doesn't race a lot. He's generally a once-a-year driver, but very, very impressive. And to go for 3 wins on the trot here at Mount Panorama in this type of racing is a great achievement.
It is actually. He's had some very good co-drivers like Alan Jones last year, and he was doing the same times. And I think anybody that can go around Bathurst the same times in the same car as Alan Jones, I'll take my hat off to anyway.
He's got a pretty good co-driver this year too. Mark Scaife, who's running away with the championship this year, really is the on-form driver, and he's just waiting in the pits to take over for his belt.
I must admit, I'm very impressed the way Mark's been driving this year. I think he is so pumped up and he is so enthusiastic about the racing. When you're on a high like he is at present, it seems as though you can't do anything wrong. We've all been there ourselves in the past, of course, you know. And I think it's going to be Mark's year this year. The way he's been driving in the touring car round so far, and obviously this will just be another one of the races for him.
Now, Gary Walden in the lead car would be thinking, I have to hand this over to Mark and I have to leave it in good condition. What would he be doing in terms of taking care of the brakes and just looking after the car generally?
I think any of these cars, Evan, if you drove them on the limit, they just would, the brakes would be the thing that would give out. The cars can be driven quite hard. In other words, drivers can drive them very quickly around the corners, lean on the tyres, lean on the suspension. That's not a problem. Up the straights again, not a problem, because you use all the power the car will give you, and they haven't got a problem in braking axles and that type of thing. So the only way you can conserve the car is basically look after the brakes. Now, we've got 2 big brakes down the bottom coming into Cowdix Chase, and the one he's coming into now, Murray's Corner. And I just think that if you sort of take these 2 a little bit easier on the brakes, don't get the brakes too hot, keep the brakes working at a temperature where they want to work, that's where the gain's going to be at the end of the day.
That outside wheel bearing too on the right-hand front side takes a lot of stress, doesn't it? There are a lot of really hard bends here.
Well, it does. And if you get the heat into the brakes, that heat is then going to be generated back through the hubs, through the wheels and so on. And then if all you've got to do is overlook a seal, for argument's sake, in the front wheel bearings, and then you have a problem.
And Craig Denyer, number 4, running in second place, the Porsche.
In actual fact, I just think it's been knocked off by the second Mazda. That's Greg Hansford there, just leading Peter Fitzgerald in car 4, now up the straight. So we've got Mazda 1 and 2. Porsche's now slipped back to third, so we've just seen that overtaking manoeuvre on pit straight.
Yeah, and 2 Porsches nose to tail virtually. There's a second Porsche just out of camera. They're just coming into view now as they come around. So this is the Falcon Tyres entry. Peter Fitzgerald, Jim Richards waiting to have a spell. Not a bad co-driver to have waiting.
Good guy. I couldn't think of anyone better, Evan. It's nice too to know that the race is going to be fought like this all day. If you look at the cars now, we're saying that the Mazdas need extra stops all the time. They're going an hour. The Porsches are hoping to go 2 hours. They're running on the road now. The Mazdas really need to get a bit more of a gap, because the next stop, as we've said before, is going to be a stop for both cars, so therefore it doesn't really matter. But at the end of 2 hours, if the cars are together, it's going to be like that all day.
I had a talk to Alan Horsley yesterday, and he was telling me that last year they had 22 perfect pit stops between the 2 cars, and of course that's what they have to do this time around, 22 perfect pit stops, which is a lot to ask when there's so many people involved in getting a car refueled, retired, driver change, when there's, you know, you're chasing the very narrowest of margins.
The greatest thing you'd be worried about would be the law of averages.
Well, the thing is too, I think with this, you've got the drivers get out there and do their best, but the race is really won and lost in the pits.
Yeah. And in the traffic, things are very hectic out there, and drivers have to take care as they run through. Talking of run through, let's run through the order as it is now after 1.5 hours of the James Hardie 12-hour. The 2 Mazdas in front, with Gary Walden still leading by 8.7 seconds from Greg Hansford. Then another in the Porsches of Peter Fitzgerald and Brad Jones, doing well placed, very close up. Another Mazda with the Bothjack driver there, not Peter Hopwood as yet. And the Maserati still hanging on after that stop, doing very well. Dick Johnson, that is an incredible result. Dick has worked his way to 7th place. Wait for another 4 or 5 hours to see how well he's going. The Subaru Impreza up very high. Then the BMW regaining ground, was back in 20th place. Half that stop with brake problems. Then the leading MR2. Peter Brock, he's had that long stop, but only lost 2 places, so that's not too bad. All Falcons there. Then Fangio in the second of the MR2. The leading B-class car, the 626. Then the 4-wheel drive Lancer. Another MR2. A lot of makes mixed up here. We have 16 car manufacturers and 26 different models in the race. Another Falcon there, a little bit further back in the field, because there's a whole variety of cars here. There are several different models of Falcons, and the second of the Mazdas there running in 22nd place, the Honda Integra, which is scrapping for the sports car title, but so far being outdistanced by the MR2s. The second Integra there. One of the great attractions about this race is the fact that there are so many different models involved, and it really is something of a marketplace for buyers. They can see how the car they might want to buy is going in this race. When you think there are cars like Suzuki's, even a Pintara, a lot of Pulsar, 7 of them, the most common car in the race, but the class leader among the small cars is still the Ford Laser TX3, which is doing well, back in 35th place, but running well in terms of its class performance. The girls in the car number 3, the Celica, in 38th place. They'll be happy just to be keeping out of trouble and see how things go when it gets towards 5 o'clock this afternoon. A number of cars have had trouble. Little ones still at the tail of the field, as you'd expect, I suppose, and the Hyundais, which have been tailing the field, still a fair way back. But Pulsar, 7 of them in the race, and a couple of them further back than we might have thought at this stage of the race. And then you start getting towards the cripples, the cars that have had problems. The TX3, for instance, has crashed and is well and truly out of the event, although it's still being shown as a contender because of the number of laps it had before it crashed up here at the top of the mountain. But Craig's still the leader, and one of the problems he must face is there seem to be great pockets of traffic, and that is a real problem working your way through these cars when the drivers are involved in their own private scraps.
Enormous amount of traffic, Evan, particularly when you've got a lot of drivers, as I mentioned before, that come out once a year, and perhaps you run at some of the smaller classes because the
sort of driver that Dick Johnson likes.
Yeah, the speed difference between the cars, such as a Mazda RX-7 and some of the smaller class cars, are quite huge on the faster parts of the circuit. Car 17, that's Dick Johnson bringing a car into the pits now, leading his class V, Falcon XR6, beautifully balanced motor car, Colin Bond. Vicky opted not to run a V8, but felt that the XR6 6-cylinder package was a better option. It's lighter in the front end and turns in better as a very impressive road car.
Yes, this is their first pit stop too. That's why they're so high up in the leaderboard.
Yeah, and changing over. Is it his son taking over? I don't know.
I think it is. I think Dick only really wanted to do this first stint, get it out of the way, hand it to his son. It's for. They're actually going to do a brake change here as well. As Dick said, they've been doing all the testing all week. They could never work out what the brake was going to be like. So a bit like the Volvo, I guess, they're actually going to change the pads on the front, have a look at them, see how they've worn, so they can now judge for the rest of the race what the wheel is going to be like.
Well, really busy days for John Smales down in the pits with so many pit changes going on. Are you there, John, at the moment?
Yes, indeed, Evan. I'm just watching Brad Jones get out of the car and Jeff Morgan get into it. The first Porsche stop, and the good news for them is that they've got to the 90-minute mark, which is going to save them anything up to 3 pit stops in this event. Now, they're on the watch at about 28 seconds at the moment. They're taking tyres only. Jones having a little bit of trouble getting Morgan into the car. But this is a good stop. 37, 38 seconds, and he's moving at 38 seconds. The Maserati, incidentally, had its first stop also just before the 90-minute mark, and it took only 20 seconds to take its fuel. Brad Jones just getting untopped. I just want to have a quick chat to him.
They're both significant stops. If they can stretch out those fuel breaks as they have so far, they could really be up with a chance towards the end of the race. Okay, John, what's happening down there now?
Okay, Bradley Jones, how is the car going?
Oh, the car's sensational, John. It's all running to plan, and, you know, we're cruising around there. And, you know, it's an hour and a half, and the Mazdas are that close we can see them. So, you know, we're very comfortable with the car, and everything's going great so far, as planned.
You are losing time to the Mazdas on the road, though, Brad.
Well, we are, but they certainly need a lot more pit stops than us, and, you know, it's an hour and a half, and they've only just gone past us again, and very small lead, so, you know, I'm still, you know, the cat and mouse game's on, and, you know, we're hanging in there.
At 90 minutes, were you on the reserve? Did you feel anything that told you were running out of fuel?
Well, no, we weren't running out of fuel, you know, this is pretty much as planned. We probably would have liked to have stopped a little bit later, but, no, it's fine, you know, we planned for a splash at the end, and everything's running, you know, as I said, as planned. It's great.
Okay, we stand by now for Peter Fitzgerald to make his pit stop.
Another of the leaders in. Thank you, John Smales. Let's just have a look at the Porsche 968. It's unusual among Porsches, not a rear-engine car, but the world's biggest 4-cylinder engine, a 3-litre multiple-valve engine, and it's got about $120,000. You could be here next year driving one of these cars. Nice car, Craig, didn't you?
Yes, you mentioned, Evan, a 4-cylinder car. Huge power for a 4-cylinder car, considering that they're not turbocharged. 74 litres fuel capacity. That's why we can see that they run longer on the track than the Mazdas. Not bad power-to-weight ratio, 1,370 kilos, Colin Bond. And, of course, this car, well, these two cars, the two Porsche 968 CSs that are driven by Fitzgerald and Brad Jones, finished actually second and third last year, but were actually disqualified on a wheel infringement, which gave Mazda 1-2 in this event.
That's right. It was just one of those crazy things that wheels you can actually change the wheel, but it's got to really respect all the original measurements, basically the width of the wheel, the diameter, and so on. And one of those measurements was slightly out. They just got pinned on it, which was a shame because I think that the guys drove the cars very hard last year, and to come second and third on the same lap as the Mazdas was a great effort.
So Peter's got a lot to prove. The Peter Fitzgerald team have a lot to prove this weekend and believe they can do it. They felt that last year they ran conservatively too early, and this year, of course, looking for a 1-2 for Porsche.
You're watching the action from the James Hardie 12-hour race at Bathurst. Running in 6th place at Bathurst, the glorious Maserati Shamal, circulating very well. And there had been fears overnight that we might have fog here at Bathurst, which is a hazard, but it's dawned a beautifully clear day. And as the race now approaches 1 hour and 40 minutes, let's ask Alan Grice for his analysis of how things are going. What do you reckon, Alan?
Well, I'm just looking at that Maserati going round, Evan, 2:42 on the last lap. They've obviously settled into a pace around the 2-minute 40s and just having a nice time. They're certainly not overdriving that car, using its power in a straight line, certainly up the hill, not loading the brakes, I don't think, and just settling into the pace.
Why don't we join the driver, Bill Gillespie, and see how he thinks they're going. Bill, Evan Green here. How's the race going?
Morning, Evan. How are you? Oh, it's going very well. The sun over the top's nice and interesting at this time of the morning, but no, everything's fine.
going to plan. How's the handling? You had some problems earlier.
Well, the handling's as good as it's going to be developed by the end of this weekend. So we're just driving around some of the little foibles that the car may have at the moment. But no, it's quite comfortable. We're not overextending ourselves, running to our race plan. Just had our scheduled fuel stop. So no, everything's going fine.
Bill, we've got a great in-car shot of that wonderful $2,000 clock on the dashboard. Tell us about that.
It's a fantastic clock. If you get time to look at it, I can tell you now.
Yes, they told me that they actually shipped the clock out in a separate container to the car because so many have been stolen, but the little gold clock that you can actually see under the 10 logo on the dashboard is worth something like $2,000.
Well, the rules of the race state that the car must run in the condition in which it's supplied, so I hope Bill's running his CD player as well as having the air conditioner running. Thanks, Bill. We'll join you a bit later. I'll let you get on with the race. We've got a great view of you, by the way, side on now. You look very relaxed.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
That's a very polite farewell for a $220,000 motor car.
A nice day at the office, you might say.
Apparently the car is quite twitchy to drive. It's, you would know, Colin, the car is quite short in the wheelbase and across the top of the mountain because they haven't had a lot of time to get the spring and shock set up right. It is quite twitchy.
It always is the problem. You said with a short wheelbase motor car, they're a little bit more twitchy than a long wheelbase car. That's a problem with the car, but then again, it gets better other ideas. You can change direction a little bit quicker, of course, as well.
Now, for 3 years in a row, Mark Brame has won the Class A in the Suzuki Swift. He was third fastest in practice. Wasn't worried by that. We've got Mark on the phone. Good morning, Mark. Oh, we're fine. It's rather a bad place to be talking to you, but how's the little Suzuki going? Okay, Mark, we'll let you go. Mark Brame in the Suzuki, one of only two drivers who's won every time out here. He's won now 3 years in the class.
Great little performance with Henry Draper, Mark Brame. They've been very, very consistent in this car, and also won the Winton 6-hour race for production cars a couple of years ago in Victoria. So know this sort of motor racing very, very well, and have been fierce competitors here. But of course, with the class change this year, they're not running against cars of their own capacity, but cars up to 2.5 litres. So they're running against far more faster cars than what they've previously done here.
So in for his pit stop, which I think will just be a scheduled stop, nothing expected except fuel. We'll see how he goes as he comes in, and John Smales will be waiting for him as he comes into the pits, although it's down the far end of the pits, and poor John's got a lot of running to do today. Are you there, John, and are you ready for him?
Yes, Evan, but it'll be Mark Warren who'll take him as he comes into the pits now. Mark's up there with him. I've quickly got Peter Fitzgerald with me. Peter was almost involved in the Chris Clearahan accident. What happened?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, some of the little cars just aren't looking in their mirrors, and we close on them so quick. And I came out of the cutting, and there was about 3 little cars together, and one moved over for me, and I went between Chris and another chap, and Chris cut across in front of me, and my left hand, my guard hit him, and he spun into the wall. And there's not a thing I could do. I was already there.
The Porsche's running like clockwork. Let's now see what's happening to the Suzuki.
Okay, Mark Brame's out of the GTI. What's the problem there, Mark? How are you travelling today?
Oh, it's not going too bad. We got a fairly severe shunt up the back end down here earlier in the race, but the car's going well. Feels really good. It's a long way, 12 hours, and hopefully we can be there at the end.
All right, pretty cold out there this morning, warming up now. How do you think you'll travel in the heat of the day?
The car will get better as it gets hotter. The heat doesn't affect the little car anywhere near as much as the bigger cars, and you know, like, it won't affect us. I had the heater on in there because it was a bit cold this morning, but you know, the car's going really well.
All right, Mark Brame there, thanks very much. Go back to the central commentary belt.
Thank you, Mark. And there's the Suzuki now entangled with one of its rivals, one of the Toyota Corollas. There are 4 of them in the race, and they have quite a spirited battle for class honours here. It's a battle that's been resolved in favour of the Suzuki in past years, but there are a lot of very well-driven Corollas here who'd like to give Toyota one more class win to add to the bundle they've won. They're the most successful mark here at Bathurst in the 12-hour race. And we've now been going for just on 1 3/4 hours.
And We've got the Gary Walden car number 1, the Mazda RX-7, still leading this event, and Mazda still 1, 2 and 3, with Peter Hopwood now having moved back into 3rd place. So it's Walden, Hansford and Hopwood for Mazda, but a magnificent shot as Gary Walden battles the traffic as he heads up the mountain, Colin. And I guess for 12 hours, I mean, the concentration that these guys have to apply to this sort of racing must really be quite taxing.
Well, it is. It is a concentration thing. You've just got to keep your mind on what you're doing the whole time. And I think it's nice now actually saying that we've got Gary getting away, whereas in the night time we had Hansford right on his tail, and I think Gary was doing all the work getting through the traffic as they were talking about before, with their lights coming up on somebody. Now he's just getting the break and getting away, and I think this is going to be the pattern for the whole race.
Okay, let's run through the class results and let's look at Class X for the extra high performance cars. And this is where you find the leaders. It's Gary Walden in the lead there from Greg Hansford, from Peter Hopwood. All Mazdas so far, and then 2 Porsches, but it's so close that any car could win in that group. That's the way among the Class X's at the moment, and that's where the outright winner certainly will come from. Class V, which is the V8 engine or high-performance 6-cylinder cars. Falcon's doing very well. Dick Johnson, who's made a lot of progress, he's up in the 2nd spot. So it's Falcon's dominating this class. A lot of really good action to follow here at the James Hardie 12-hour at Bathurst. Doing an absolutely superb job here in the James Hardie 12-hour, and indeed in 1993 and 1992, where he won on both occasions, always with different co-drivers. This time he has Mark Scaife with him, the leading man in highly modified touring car racing, and he's dominating the race at this stage. Gary Walden, the market gardener, grows flowers in 83 acres up on the central coast at YE. 42 laps completed as we come to 1 hour and 51 minutes of running in the James Hardie 12-hour, and looking at car number 21. This is Richard Wilson, the Holden Commodore Group A. It's an SS model. Troy Nicholson is the driver, Richard Wilson the entrant and co-driver, and Roland Hill has joined them as well. They got away to a marvellous start and have come back through the field since then, but absolutely bolted off. This is leading the V8s or high-performance 6s, Kevin Burton, and it's got up in front of Dick Johnson, so it's leading him and leading Class B, and there you can see the Alan Jones, Neville Crichton BMW in behind it. That's had various problems, has recovered to the extent of 7th place, so it's going well and about to come by, and Kevin Burton knows well. And he's got a quick car in pursuit and wanting to get past, so he lets him by as Burton continues on his way, 12th outright, and leading Class B ahead of Dick Johnson. Across the top of the mountain and over towards Skyline. And the classes are very different this year. Class V is not on engine size, it's for cars with V8 engines or high-performance 6-cylinder cars. The whole concept of the race is to give people an understanding of the classes and put them into the categories that people might choose when they're buying a car. So this is if you want a high-performance 6 or a V8, you'd look for a car in Class V, and the leader is this Falcon we're following at the moment. Dick Johnson leading the class earlier in the day, and I think he must have had a problem because he's back to 13th place. He was Colin Bond up higher than that a little while ago. No, what he said, Bill, when he came in for the first stop, they're going to change the front pads because they had no idea what the pad wheel was going to be like, so they're doing that as a safety margin, I guess, and know how they're going to now attack the rest of the day. So we knew that stop was going to be a slightly longer stop than, say, these guys have done, and that's the reason why they're back where they are. And the leader... Now we've got it. So this is Peter Hopwood, Terry Bosnjak in the car, and the timer starts. And this is one of 3 cars that have led the race so far. Both the BP Visco Mazda Australia team entries, Gary Walden and Greg Hansford in car numbers 1 and 7. This car 8 in 6th place at this stage, headed by the Maserati of Bill Gillespie and Graham Nielsen, car number 10. The
minutes in 5th place. Ahead of that is Brad Jones with Peter Fitzgerald. In the pits, though, John Smales.
And the problem, Will, with the car 8 is brakes. 6 minutes ago, Terry Bosanjak brought the car into the pits totally out of front brakes. They fixed the brakes, sent it out again with young Warwick Rooklyn at the wheel. Rooklyn has now done only 2 laps, and he's come back in very agitated about the front brakes. You can see what's going on now. More than 50 seconds on the clock. Peter Hopwood at the back of the car looking distraught. I mean, this team currently, only 2 hours into the race, is starting to fall ever so slightly to pieces, and that's a great shame from an excellent 3rd position. Quite a lot of top-off oil going into the engine, and that went in only 6 minutes ago as well. So Rooklyn in concern. Terry Bosanjak said as he came to Hill Corner at the end of the main straight, the car just was without brakes at all. That's why he brought it in 6 minutes ago. And Bosanjak coming around now just to have a quick chat. Terry, just how bad was the brake situation?
Oh, just absolutely no brakes whatsoever.
And now what's been the problem with Warwick? What's Warwick's problem now?
Warwick went out the pits and found that as he was going out pit gate, he had no brakes either, just no pedal. So he's come back in just to have a quick lead. Hopefully we're right now.
So he's bad times for car 8 doing so well and real brake problems, and that'll be something that'll be worrying the other Mazda drivers as well, because what can happen to one model, particularly a car that has won here before, could well and truly happen to the other, so they'll be very concerned about what's going on with car 8.
They would, but I think that the factory cars have actually run here before, and they've got a bit more knowledge, say, than the people running their cars for the first time, like the Peter Hopwoods and the McLeods. They're still a little bit in the dark, and they've been doing a lot of testing, but we've said this before, you can test as much as you like, but the race really needs to count.
Okay, Colin, well, after 1 hour 55 minutes, lots of things happening, Tim Webster.
There certainly are, Evan, but we better get to this leaderboard before we run out of time. So let's have a look at the way the cars are placed at this point in time in the James Hardie 12-hour. Alan Grice is with me. The Mazda RX-7s, what will stop them short of a brick wall?
Well, they're pulling out. They're really doing it the right way, too. They're building themselves a gap. Yes.
Porsche's in 3 and 4. And as you say, a big gap. Then the Maserati Shimano, which is going all right. Another RX-7. Now, Jones had problems early with the BMW. He's really pulled back to 237s, going well. There's Brocky in the Volvo. First of the MR2s, the other one, and then we get to the Falcons as we go all the way through the leaderboard for you.
In the Mazda 626, still leading its class in 16th ahead of that Falcon. And then the Mitsubishi Lancer holds the Commodore. That's the Group A model. The Ford Falcon SS. Honda Integra with Wilson aboard. Nilsson Triple S Pulsar, then into the Toyota Group A Rally, a new car, then the Mazda Citroen, Honda Integra, Ford Falcon ED, the XR6, there's 4 of those in the race, Ford Lacer TX3 non-turbo, the Toyota Corolla, another MR2 Suzuki Swift, Nissan Pintara TRX, another Suzuki Swift GT, Toyota Corolla, Triple S Nissan, loading them up a Holden Commodore VP.
There's the girls in the Celica.
Yeah. Ahead of the Honda and a Ford Falcon EBS. Another Corolla, another pair of GTI Corollas. Hyundai getting down towards the end. A Nissan Pulsar S Triple S and another Mazda RX-7 of McLeod Dane, who have been in trouble with overheating. A Nissan Triple X into the another one into the Honda CRX in 50th spot. Still good, very good reliability out there, Tim.
Yeah, indeed there is, but there's the RX-7, and they really are just looking terrific yet again for the 3rd year in a row. Mind you, we're only 2 hours in, a long way to go.
Yes, but the thing I like about the way the Mazdas have gone about their work today is they've pulled out a minute and a half because they know they're going to have more stops. They've done it by driving the cars. They're getting on the curves, not in a silly fashion, but they are using the tyres. They're trying to keep the brakes alive, but they're using the car to build a gap. You deserve to have a gap if you go after it like that. They're planning to win the race, and they're saying, this is the pace, come and run us down.
All right. We'll find out what happens a little later on, but here's your chance to win a beautiful Toyota MR2 Bathurst model. It's very simple. Here's all you have to do.
For your chance to win the adrenaline-pumping Toyota MR2 Bathurst, all you have to do is call this number, 0055 60208. Be just like Fangio in your own race-proven Toyota MR2 Bathurst. The winner will be announced today, just after the winner has crossed the line in the James Hardie 12-hour. So call 0055 60208 to be in the draw for Toyota MR2 Bathurst. and keep watching 10's live and exclusive coverage of the James Hardie 12 Hour. Watch the mountain erupt right here on 10. Oh, what a feeling, Toyota.
Absolutely, Billy. Get on the blower and get into that car. All right, we're back here with an update at 8:30, then hourly updates, and then we're back here at 12 noon to take you right through to the end. See you back here in an hour and a half.
James Hardie 12-hour update is proudly brought to you by BP Visco 5000 Motor Oil, Ultimate Engine Protection. Coca-Cola, proud sponsors of the James Hardie, the new Toyota Celica, It's Turned Savage, and Mobil, looking after tomorrow today.
Welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst for the James Hardie 12 Hour. Things are getting pretty exciting here. We've got a great dice going at the moment between second and third, but let's first discuss with Colin Bond and Graham Nielsen the Maserati. G'day, Graham.
Hi, how are you?
You wanted a gun earlier, a bit dirty on yourself, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I had a bit of a spin coming off Skyline, and then I don't know whether that caused it, but the front wheel bearing collapsed and gave me a bit of a fright also.
Well, I think we've got some pictures here while you and Colin have a chat. We'll find them of the Maserati.
We're looking at the car before. I mean, everyone was sort of saying it's the most expensive car there. It also has, you know, a very good power-to-weight ratio. Obviously, it's very quick up the straights, but I guess it's lacking a little bit of development time, basically.
We've had the car really for 2 months. 3 weeks of that was getting the roll cage fitted. The suspension actually arrived last Friday for it. We went to Lakeside, 10 laps, put in the transporter and brought it down here. So the whole time he's been developing the car, and every lap we go, we learn something new.
How long do you expect to get out of the brakes in the car before you've got to change pads?
We've been changing brake discs and rotors and pads all in one go at 3 hours.
Right.
And the reports back were that they didn't really need changing, but that was just a precautionary measure because we haven't had the car. We don't really know what the data is.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll take a look and see what happened to you in this little highlight package from Will Hagan. Will, it's yours.
Graham Nielsen had an exciting arrival over the top of Skyline. He was crossed up almost before he hit the corner, and what a brilliant job by Colin Osborne in the Corolla number 52. Nielsen then backs it across the track, and then subsequently, of course, had a problem, and had just gone out of the pits incidentally. Subaru Impreza is leading the turbo class from Colin Brock, and Peter Bond, probably, from Peter Brock lying second in the class, and Trimboli is indeed third in the class in that Mitsubishi Lancer. Now, the Maserati had this problem. It was the wheel bearing loose. It was occasionally scraping on the mudguard, so he had a slow lap round. Graham Nielsen sitting in there and talking with Colin Bond. Finally got back to the pits after a very long pit stop, replaced a major part of the left front suspension around the stub axle and some of the other componentry, and it has just gone back out onto the track, and it's well down out of the top 17. Can't see the leaderboard below that at the moment. Was 7th when it encountered these problems, and then this problem with Porsche number 14, Brad Jones at the wheel, lying in 4th place. First gear only, it's just been put away in the track, and here we are live. Top of the mountain, and car number 41, as you can see, is sideways across the track. That's the Pulsar Chris Kousparis, and has collected another car. That's Paul Barrett and Anthony Wilson, the car that Kousparis is sharing with them. As we go through the leaderboard, have a look at it. Have a look at the gaps, but have a look at the cars too, as things really are changing in this James Hardie 12 Hour. That's been a wild and woolly old time up there. Obviously we'll need service vehicles, perhaps may bring on a pace car lap. So plenty still to happen in the James Hardie 12 Hour that's gone just over 5 hours. 5 hours and 4 minutes now, so we're not yet at half race distance in a race where Greg Hansford is running quickly, and he's nicely established, 52 seconds in the lead. But a great dice between Gary Walden in second place and hot on his hammer, a quarter of a second only. There you see them in frame, second and third place. Jim Richards has been chasing, in fact, not Gary Walden, but his teammate Mark Scaife. Big argument they've been having as Porsche chases Mazda. Winfield Group A, teammate in Holden Commodores chases the other. Scaife leading Jim Richards at the moment, but I suspect the older man rather keen to show that in these cars he can mix it and be as competitive as he ever was. Past the yellow flag area, they now sprint. They're on the green flag section, and the James Hardie continues at a frantic and fascinating pace. Back to Tim Webster in the studio.
Thanks, Will. And before we go, the Toyota MR2 competition, to win an MR2, here's what you have to do. Now, apparently we've had a few calls from you saying that you didn't know you had to answer a question. Question's very easy. It's the Toyota MR2 sticks like what? I'll just give you the answer. Colin's laughing. Glue, of course. Glue, it sticks like. So that's the very simple question that you'll answer when you ring that number. 0055 60208, 0055 60208. All right, we're back for one more update, and then we're back at midday to take you right through the James Hardie 12 Hour. We'll see you in 1 hour.
5,000 motor miles amid engine protection. Coca-Cola, proud sponsors of the James Hardie. The new Toyota Celica, it's turned savage. And Mobil, looking after tomorrow today.
Welcome back to Mount Panorama at Bathurst, the James Hardie 12 Hour. Another update for you. And I'll tell you what, it's been all happening since we last saw you. We've lost cars all over the place. We'll fill you in on all of that in just a minute. But with Colin Bond, Dick Johnson, who's a pretty happy fella. Hey, you're going all right?
Well, certainly at the moment.
Still leading the class?
Yeah, we're still going, and the young fellas are doing a great job.
Yeah. Actually, you started out in car, I think 15th, Dick, got up to 7th after about an hour and a half. You've got out of the car. You plan to get back in the car or not?
No, I just thought that I've had enough practice around Mount Panorama, and I think these young fellas need a couple of miles. I mean, they're obviously using all the curbs and everything else that goes with it. But they're doing a tremendous job, and they're right on the pace, and they're really looking after the car. As a matter of fact, they've both come in with the brakes in a damn sight better condition than what I bought them in. So that's saying something for them.
I know you changed the brakes after the first stop. You had planned to do it to see how the wear was. How far can you get now out of the brakes?
Well, we're basically changing the front calipers every stop because Bathurst is a daunting enough place as it is without driving around without brakes. And it's the last thing I want to happen is the young guys run out of brakes. So for safety reasons, we're changing them every stop, which is no real hassle. And I think because we're doing that, it is not a problem to change them. But if you let them go any further, the things jam and they wear out and they wreck the discs and things like that. So I think it was the right decision to change them every time we stop.
Okay.
Thanks, Dick. All the best for the rest of the race.
Thank you.
As we said, plenty happened. We've lost quite a few cars. Let's go to an update. Here's Evan Green.
Thank you, Tim. It's 6 hours into the race, halfway mark, and there's been action certainly on top of the mountain. Watch Chris Kusparis and in a Pulsar and Bevan Purcell come through close together in the Vintara, and look what happened. Well, that brought out the pace car. There are a few prangs around here, but the pace car came out for 4 laps through to lap number 120 while the track was cleared, and that brought the field close together. Then when the pace car pulled off, we had more problems. Johnson's car going through well there, but the top of the mountain seems to be a place where people do have trouble. This is the halfway mark, so cars are getting a little worn, and here we have car 22. This is Johnson Morley. And then Alan Jones just stopped the car, and he spoke to John Smales.
Alan Jones, what happened?
It just lunched itself, basically. It's about lunchtime, so it decided to eat itself.
And another car out. This is the all-girl crew in the Toyota Celica. We're all sad to see that. Heather Bailey, the British driver, and Gwen DeSearle. Parked at the top of the mountain. They've been going well, going steadily. We don't know what the trouble is yet because we haven't seen the girls, and they're at the other end of the track. But that's a shame. That's a car that had been going well. You can see the field run down there. It's getting to be quite a fascinating contest at the moment. When Alan Jones went out, he was in 4th place. Now we have as the leader car number 7, which is the RX-7 with Greg Hansford on board. Peter Fitzgerald in the Porsche is up into 2nd spot. Gary Walden in the RX-7 in 3rd. So it's it's still a battle between the Porsches and the RX-7s, and it could be anyone's race at this stage. A lot of things happening. You can see the run down through the field with various class cars being shown there. A shame about the girls. They were going well, and we had hoped to have a talk to them, but they've done what a lot of people do here, which is just depart the race a little too early in the piece. Dick Johnson leading his class, which is a great result as far as he's concerned in Class V. And the Pulsars and the Lantra still at the tail of the field here, with the numbers of runners gradually diminishing as we reach this halfway mark. Okay, Tim Webster, back to you.
Thanks, Evan. Yes, as Evan says, it really has all been happening here in the last hour or so. One more time, this is how you win yourself a Toyota MR2 Bathurst model, beautiful motor car. The telephone number is 0055 60208. They will ask you an extremely simple question on 0055 60208. I'll give you the answer, it's blue. When we come back, we're here for 5.5 hours. We'll bring you the whole lot. See you then.